Hi, my name is Julie Ann Link, and welcome to the Music Link. This week on the Let's Link project, I'd like to welcome Judith Farmer. Thank you so much for being here, Judy.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
To start out, Judy, could you please share with us who you are and an overview of what you do as a professional musician?
Ah, well, my name is Judith Farmer. I live and work in Los Angeles in Southern California, and I have a very uh, varied lines of work. I'm a teacher at the University of Southern California. I play in the Los Angeles Opera Orchestra. I'm a member of the Pasadena Symphony and the Long Beach Symphony. I do studio work for movies and television and jingles, and I play a lot of chamber music. So I think I can fairly say I have a varied career.
Absolutely. Judy, could you share with us about where you grew up?
I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania. For people familiar with United States, it's an area called the Poconos. Not known for its great cultural richness. It's quite beautiful. It's a lot of resorts in the area. It's the honeymoon capital of the United States. They've got heart-shaped bathtubs, and it's a very pretty place to have grown up. I come from a very small town there, and the best thing that was going on in that town was there was very good music education in the schools, just really from elementary school through high school. We were so fortunate that we had a string of excellent music teachers. That's just an anomaly there.
Hmm. Could you share with us how you got introduced to the bassoon?
Well, I started on clarinet in fourth
Mm.
grade, like, pretty typically. I think my story is very typical. I started on the clarinet when I was 9, and got to the 8th grade when I was about 13, and the band needed a bassoonist, and I got elected because I have big hands. And of course, I loved it right away because I was the only one. I was the best one for 50 miles around. And so I
Yes.
think my experience is very typical for a lot of young players. They're highly regarded because they're the only ones. So that's, but as I say, I was lucky. My high school band director was my teacher, and though he was a clarinetist, he was a good music educator, and he got me off to a really good start. And I had my senior year of high school, I had some lessons. A lot of people will know the name Lauren Glickman. I had lessons with him, and he helped me get into college. And I went on to Indiana University, where I studied with Leonard Sherrill, which is a name some older people might know. Young folks don't know anymore unless they have a lot of international editions. You'll see his name on the cover as an editor. But he was my first teacher in college, Mr. Leonard Sherrill.
Could you tell us about your studies abroad?
Well, so from Indiana University, they have this fabulous program, junior year abroad in Vienna, and I was a double major in Germanic languages and Bassoon performance, and so I thought, well, that's an awfully good fit, isn't it? And so signed up and got accepted to the program to go to Vienna, and there I just with good luck stumbled on Karl Erdberger, who was Milan Turkovic's teacher. And so my junior year abroad ended up lasting 20 years. I, I fell in love with Vienna, and I adored Erdbeger as my bassoon teacher. He was so inspiring and really everything I needed and wanted, just, as far as getting organized and being very systematic and building up your foundation for playing. And during the summers, on one summer, I went back to IU to finish up my degree, and I encountered Mordecai Rechtman there, who was principal bassoonist of the Israel Philharmonic. And so I would say he's my other major teacher. And they have an interesting connection. Mordecai's teacher in those days in Palestine had emigrated from Vienna and studied with the same teacher that my teacher Erdbeger studied with. So they actually came from the same school, which I personally find interesting. And, they used to say the same thing. One would say it in German and the other would say it in English. And it would ring bells until I figured out what the connection was. So that was a funny coincidence to learn.
Mm-hmm. Judy, could you share a bit more about how your teachers influenced you and anything that comes to mind with if how they influenced your life in playing?
Um, well, Erdberger was, as I say, very organized and very methodical in his teaching. We were lucky; we had 2 lessons a week. So, I find students a lot now. They have their lesson on Monday and they take the rest of the day off after their lesson, and we would go right home and start practicing because we had another lesson in 3 days. So I think that was a huge advantage, and we did most etude books we did twice. So let's say you're doing the Milda scale studies. The first time through, you did them all dotted. And then you went back and did them at a pretty good clip to really solidify. So I know that sounds terribly time consuming, but I just find it lays such a good foundation. So as far as time permits, I try to emulate that in my own teaching. That it's okay. We do it twice. We do it, and yeah. So I would say that would be kind of a major thing I took away from studying with Erdberger.
Hmm. And then does any other highlights come to mind with just what you learned and influences?
Well, another big emphasis in Erdberger's teaching was um, to, even if you're doing the simplest of scale studies or whatever, to always incorporate music. Make sure that you're phrasing well, and of course looking out for pitch, and not just making it a technical study, but to always have musical considerations in mind.
Mm.
And just want to, we did not focus on reeds a lot, I would say, in my studies in Vienna. And that is something where Mordecai helped me a lot. He's a master, and he's still with us doing it at 95, I think. And many of your listeners might know he brought out a book this year on his system of making reeds. So if you're looking for yet another way to try to fix this puzzle we have to deal with every day, you could give that a look. But he truly is a genius and has a lot of it figured out.
Judy, are there any tips or advice you could share about what you've learned about the music industry since working professionally?
I'll quote the flute teacher at USC, Jim Walker. He's a big name in the flute world here, and he was asked this in a flute magazine interview, and he said, "Be a nice person, you know, show up on time, be reliable, be pleasant to sit next to." I've been on audition committees where someone gets hired and they get in the orchestra and they turn out to be a bit of a jerk personally. When it was time for that person's review, I said, "But he can really play." And he said, "Do you want to work with him for 30 years?" And that person didn't get tenure, so that's a very unfortunate story, but don't be a jerk.
Mm-hmm. Great advice, Judy. Have you ever considered changing careers outside of music?
um, I have a couple times. As I said, I was also I studied Germanic languages, which I loved. I enjoyed that a lot, and so sometimes I've wondered, could I have done something with my languages? Um, and I got my first job right out of school, and I had very little to no previous experience as a student, a female foreign student in Vienna. I did not get very many playing opportunities before so I had a lot of time to practice. That was the good news. So um, and so I got to this job in northern Germany, and I was shocked at the people sitting in the back in the second violins section kind of phoning it in. And I thought, this is not what I practiced 4 to 6 hours a day in those days. To me, this was everything. And so I wrote my mother and I said, "I think I want to quit and go work for Mother Teresa or something." She said, "Keep your job, send your money to Mother Teresa." I had to. I think many people have that experience transitioning from being a student to being a professional. It's a very different situation. People have lives. They've got kids at home. They've got stuff to do. So it's not the all enveloping thing it might be when you're a student. So that was definitely a transition for me.
Yes.
Yeah, where I did think, well, maybe I'll try something else.
Could you share with us about your teaching philosophies and your approach to teaching music and the bassoon?
Well, I think very much what I said about Erberger's teaching. I try to start people out on pretty basic etudes and do them very thoroughly. And I know a lot of people want to get onto the Jolivet concerto or play Hummel, but I would just say, look, if we want to do that, we have to learn how to walk before we can run. So I try to cover a lot of basics, and as I say, try to from the start always incorporate good musicianship and good sound production. I think that's something I try to focus on a lot, just particularly a lot of young players coming from high school. Maybe they don't have access to the best reeds, so they develop poor habits in their embouchures, and just trying to sort that out. I think that's especially for younger players, a major focus in the beginning. Of course, learning orchestral excerpts, just trying to prepare them for orchestra auditions. And we try to cover all the bases, have reed making, of course, every week. And yeah, there's a lot to do.
A lifelong process.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Judy, I loved reading about all of your chamber music festivals that you're a part of. Could you share more with us just about your chamber music career?
Well, I've been so fortunate. I've been so lucky. I would like to mention one musician who was not one of my teachers directly, but from whom I learned a lot. And this is someone everybody should look up. He was not a bassoonist. His name's Sándor Vég, Sandorvegh, was a Hungarian violinist who premiered one of Bartók's string quartets, and he had a chamber orchestra in Salzburg. I played principal bassoon in for about 10 years. And we were on tour with Schubert 9 for 2 weeks, where we played Schubert 9 in a different city every night. And, if you've played Schubert 9, you know it's exhausting. And he just never let you phone it in ever. You had to give 100% all the time. And we always had like an hour and a half sound check before each concert. So it was really pretty taxing. And we got to the last concert somewhere in Switzerland, in a casino, in a poor acoustic. And everybody was kind of tired, and he still had his hour and a half of sound check before the concert. And he closes his score and he says, there's always more to do, so there's just, anyway, so that's a long way of telling you about Sándor Vég. He had his own chamber music festival in the south of England, in Cornwall, called Prussia Cove. And among musicians who know about it, it's known as the Marlborough of England, or of Europe, in that it's not like a festival where you have to get to a performance state by the end of the week. It's really to take the pressure off, to just really explore the music and maybe try doing it a couple different ways. And if you feel like you've got it ready for performance at the end of the week, there's a concert. And if you don't, there's not. And so that was a wonderful experience. When I moved to Los Angeles, one of my first connections was with a woman named Dolores Stevens, who had her own series here and also had a series on Martha's Vineyard. So got connected with Dee, and we've played chamber music the whole time I've been here. She's just a force of nature and kind of the grand dame of chamber music in LA. Had the good fortune to play in La Jolla a couple of times, a chamber music series down there. And some people might know about Camerata Pacifica up in Santa Barbara, is another very fine series. So yeah, I've been lucky.
So Judy, working all around the world, could you share with us a memorable orchestra audition that comes to mind?
I'll tell you a funny experience. When I got the job in the radio in Vienna, one of the excerpts they asked for was Pulcinella. Oh dear, I should have looked this up. What is it? Bum, 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 bum.
Uh-huh.
And so I played it at what was probably a safe tempo, like you do, in the first time. And from behind the screen, no, this was already in the finals. One of the people in the jury says, "Faster, please." And so I played it at a pretty brisk tempo, and it went quite well, you know. So I surprised myself a little bit, and I just turned on my heel and did a 360, and that made everybody laugh because because of my reaction. And a horn player in the jury told me afterwards, he says, "I knew you won the audition when you turned around like." I thought that was. So I was just so really spontaneously happy in the moment about how well it went. You know?
It's important to celebrate those moments. Yeah.
Absolutely. Enough of the other kind. We have enough of the other kind.
Judy, could you share with us about your first audition experience?
My first audition, I was finishing my last year of school, and I just started writing to there's a newspaper in Europe called Das Orchester. That is kind of like our international musician here, where the positions are advertised. And I wrote to everyone in the paper, from the smallest orchestra to the Berlin Philharmonic. I just wrote to everyone. And I wrote 30 letters, and I didn't get invited to anything because, of course, my resume was about this long. And well into the spring, in March of that year, I got a letter from Braunschweig, which is somewhere near Hanover in Berlin, saying, come and play audition for our principal bassoon position in 10 days. And so I said, okay. And I got ready and got on a train. It was a good 600 miles from Vienna. And I was lucky. I had a good day, and I got the job, and went to the train station to take the train back to Vienna, and called my teacher on a payphone, which nobody will know what that is anymore. And said I got the job, and he couldn't believe it. He said, "You didn't get it, right?" I said, "No, I got the job. I really did." And yeah, I think we have to remember that auditions are stressful for teachers too. That they feel like what their teaching's on the line. And I was going far away to a place where I didn't know anybody, nobody knew me. And both of my predecessors in this orchestra were students of Tuneman, that he was teaching in Hanover at the time, kilometers away from Braunschweig. And so I think he just didn't have a student at the time. I think he didn't have a student who was ready at the time. So I was lucky. I just kind of fell into that little niche. It was a wonderful experience. I got to play principal bassoon on everything, Rite of Spring, Bolero, Scheherazade, Firebird, just almost anything you can name, I got to play, Chai-4. So it was a wonderful starting experience for a very young player out of school.
Judy, do you have any tips or advice around coping with music performance anxiety, if that's something that you've experienced?
The tricks I used myself are one is one I got from my mom as a young piano student, is just you can all do it right now. Take 3 deep breaths before you start. This helps take everything down a notch. And another tip I got from a dentist, that you can take your tongue and press the spot behind your front teeth. It's apparently an acupressure spot that helps you come down. And he told me that's why babies suck their thumb. Now, I don't know if that's true, but if you think about it, it's the spot you would press if you were sucking your thumb. And that's something you can do really with nobody noticing. If you're on stage and you're just a little tense, 3 deep breaths, and that I really find helped me come down. Just come down a notch. A little nervousness is good, right? You don't want to be too unnervous. A lot of people say they eat bananas, so that's something else you can try.
All great advice. Could you tell us briefly about your reed making style and any techniques?
I try to go pretty much by my training from Mordecai, that you want to get the reed balanced, and he more than I teaches really a minimum of embouchure pressure. You can find videos of him on YouTube or Facebook where he's demonstrating. He uses virtually no embouchure. It's all air with him. And I don't think I have any secret. I use Danzi cane, gout shape and profile. They start, and I don't, and so I make the blanks. And where I maybe differ a little bit from other people, I don't use a tip profiler. I have had no success with them whatsoever. I like to do the work by hand, and I work very slowly. I break a reed in very slowly, like probably other people would think it was dead already. But I take the profile on the cane I get is quite thick, so it's at least 2 or 3 scrapes until I get it to where it's even playable. And then it's certainly another 2 or 3 times through before I could play it in public. And I don't play on the same reed 2 days in a row. I try to have at least 3 or 4 going at a time so I can be alternating them. It's kind of like your sneakers. You want to let them rest in between uses so they can air out. And
Judy, could you share with us any skills learned through music that apply to everyday life?
Well, I think that's very much like what we said about how to be successful in the music industry. It's just, get organized, be on time, be a nice person. How many people do you know who are extremely talented, but they just can't show up on time? There's a bunch of those. Or, do your homework. Pay yourself first. Practice first thing in the morning. No, I used to do that. I wish I were better about it now, but it's, yeah, it's, you can always go out and play later, I think. Practice now.
Great advice. And is there any final advice you could share for musicians just starting out their music careers?
Listen to a ton of music. That was one of the great advantages of studying in Vienna. I could go hear the Vienna State Opera for $1. I went almost every night, and I could go hear all the greatest orchestras in the world came to play in the Musik. If you don't know, that's one of the greatest halls in the world. You could go to standing room for $1, and just listen to as much music as you can. As a college student, I did not listen to very many bassoon recordings, I confess. I listened to a lot of singers, especially mezzo-sopranos. I love Leontine Price and Janet Baker. And listen to great musicians, and listen to music of other instruments, string quartets, chamber orchestra, piano concertos. Just, broaden your scope. Don't, we don't have that much repertoire anyway. So, yeah. So learn the oboe sonatas. Learn other repertoire. Broaden your horizon.
Well, Judy, thank you so much for this opportunity to interview you, and it's been a joy to get a glimpse into your life and career as a professional musician. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure, and look forward to seeing you at the chat.
So for everyone tuning in, keep an eye out for 2 events held every week on the Music Link. Every Thursday, a new YouTube video launches, and every Sunday Central Daylight Time is a live Zoom group discussion session with a new guest every week that you can register for the Zoom link on the website. Check out Judy's live hosting discussion session coming up this Sunday, where she's sharing about what life was like living and working as a professional musician in Europe, all about European auditions, the behind the scenes of making a CD, and working one-on-one with a composer and her husband, Gernot Wolfgang, tips and advice on making a great recording, and so much more. Find out more about Judy and her work at judithfarmerplaysfavorites.com. Please like, comment, and share any questions or feedback in the section below, and we'd be happy to incorporate these in the live discussion. Please subscribe to this channel and turn on the bell for notifications, which really helps keep the Music Link moving forward. The Music Link is a New Zealand-based resource for people around the world to share, learn, and connect through music. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next video.